What if one number exposed a problem the league could no longer hide? Not a stat line, not a score, a dollar figure that quietly shifted the balance of power in women's basketball. Because while fans were focused on packed arenas and record-breaking ratings, something bigger was happening behind the scenes. A gap between value and compensation that had been ignored for years suddenly became impossible to defend. For a long time, the WNBA survived on patience, players trusting that progress would eventually catch up. But when a single number started circulating, it didn't just raise eyebrows. It raised questions about respect, leverage, and who really benefits when the league grows. This wasn't about greed. It was about reality finally colliding with the business side of the game. And once that happened, the ceiling didn't crack, it vanished. For years, the WNBA sold fans a simple story. Growth was coming, just not yet. Players were told to be patient. The league was building. Investment would follow success. But behind closed doors, one detail kept resurfacing, and it made that promise harder to believe every season. The revenue split. Compared to other professional leagues, the gap was impossible to ignore. While players helped drive ticket sales, TV deals, and sponsorships, their share of league revenue remained surprisingly limited. Publicly, the league emphasized sustainability. Privately, many fans began asking why growth never seemed to trickle down to the athletes actually filling arenas. As ratings slowly climbed and social media buzz grew louder, the conversation shifted. This wasn't the early survival era anymore. Games were trending, jerseys were selling, new audiences were showing up, yet the financial structure stayed mostly the same. That contradiction didn't sit well with players or with fans who started doing the math themselves. Some supporters pointed out that NBA players receive a much larger percentage of league revenue. Others argued the comparison wasn't fair. But even within women's sports, the numbers raised eyebrows. The issue wasn't just how much money existed. It was how it was divided and who had the power to decide that. Reports claim that during CBA talks, this revenue split became one of the most sensitive sticking points. The league wanted flexibility, players wanted transparency, and neither side seemed eager to blink first. On the surface, negotiations looked calm, but underneath, frustration was quietly building. What made the situation even more controversial was timing. This debate didn't happen during a downturn. It happened during momentum. When the league finally had leverage, the players felt like they still didn't. Some fans believe this was the moment patience ran out, not because players expected instant riches, but because they wanted acknowledgement that their value had changed. The league's message stayed cautious. The players' message grew sharper. And that disconnect did more than stall negotiations. It planted doubt. Because once people start asking why a system won't evolve, especially when the numbers say it should, the conversation stops being about money. It becomes about respect. And that question was about to follow the league into every headline that came next. Just as negotiations stalled, something unexpected happened. The league's visibility exploded. Attendance jumped in multiple markets. Broadcast numbers surprised even longtime analysts. Social clips from regular season games were pulling in millions of views. Suddenly, the WNBA wasn't just growing quietly. It was showing up in public, measurable ways. And that changed the tone of the entire debate. For years, the league had framed caution as necessity. Growth first, rewards later. But now, players and fans were watching momentum arrive in real time, and they noticed how quickly the messaging shifted. Success was celebrated publicly, while structural changes remained slow behind the scenes. That contrast raised eyebrows. Players weren't just athletes anymore. They were driving storylines, rivalries, and online conversations. Jerseys sold out faster. Road games felt like events. And yet, many of the financial mechanisms still reflected an earlier era, one when survival, not expansion, was the priority. Some fans believe this is where tension quietly escalated, not through press conferences or public statements, but through expectation. When growth shows up on the scoreboard, in the stands, and on social feeds, it creates pressure. Pressure to adapt, pressure to share, pressure to acknowledge that the league had entered a new phase. Reports suggest league officials urged patience, emphasizing long-term stability. Players, meanwhile, saw a different picture. They saw momentum as leverage, not something to delay around, but something to act on before it faded. And timing mattered. Momentum in sports is fragile. Miss the window, and it doesn't always come back the same way. That idea circulated heavily among fans online. Many questioned whether the league was being too careful at the exact moment boldness was required. What made things more complicated was how uneven the growth felt. Certain players were becoming household names. Certain matchups drew massive attention, but the system treated everyone as if nothing had changed yet. That disconnect fueled online debate. Was the league protecting itself or holding itself back? Some supporters argued that slow progress was still progress. Others felt the players were being asked to carry the league's visibility without receiving proportional recognition. Neither side felt unreasonable, but they weren't aligned. And when momentum meets hesitation, friction is almost guaranteed. Because once growth becomes visible to everyone, the question isn't whether change should happen. It's why it hasn't already. And that question was starting to get louder. What made the situation feel heavier was what was said publicly. It was what wasn't. As negotiations dragged on, official statements stayed careful. Neutral language, measured optimism, words designed not to alarm anyone. But behind that calm surface, fans noticed something unusual. Players who were normally active online went quiet. Interviews became shorter, answers more guarded. Silence in this case wasn't empty, it was strategic. Veteran players understood how quickly narratives can be flipped. Speak too openly, and the focus shifts away from the issue. Say too little, and speculation fills the gap. And that's exactly what happened. Online forums, podcasts, and comment sections began reading between the lines. Some fans believed the silence reflected frustration, not explosive anger, but something colder. A sense of being heard but not truly answered. Reports claim certain player reps felt discussions were looping without progress, revisiting the same talking points while real decisions stalled. Meanwhile, league leadership emphasized unity. Growth takes time, stability matters, the future looks bright. All true statements, yet none addressed the core tension fans were picking up on. That gap created two different conversations, one happening in meeting rooms, another unfolding online, where supporters debated fairness, timing, and power. And once those conversations separate, trust becomes harder to maintain. What complicated matters further was how uneven the media coverage felt. Some outlets focused on optimism. Others hinted at deeper cracks. Depending on where fans looked, they saw completely different stories, either a league moving patiently forward or one struggling to keep pace with its own success. Players noticed that split too. Several moments raised eyebrows, a carefully worded quote here, a delayed appearance there. Small signals that suggested something unresolved was lingering, nothing dramatic on its own. But together, they formed a pattern that fans couldn't ignore. Rumors began circulating, unconfirmed but persistent. Some fans believe internal timelines didn't match public messaging. Others speculated that compromises discussed early were quietly walked back later. Again, no proof, just patterns that fueled conversation. And once speculation takes hold, it rarely stays contained. The league wanted calm, players wanted clarity, fans wanted honesty. Those three goals don't always align, especially during moments of transition. Because silence can buy time, but it can also raise questions. And the longer those questions linger, the harder they are to control. The turning point didn't come from a press conference or a leaked report. It came from the fans. At first, reactions were scattered. A few frustrated posts, some heated debates, nothing unusual for a growing league. But then the tone shifted. What started as questions slowly turned into patterns of concern, and once fans start comparing notes, momentum builds fast. Supporters weren't just arguing about numbers or timelines anymore. They were arguing about respect. Some fans believed the issue wasn't a single decision, but a repeated feeling of being asked to wait. Wait for growth. Wait for visibility. Wait for the payoff that always seemed just one season away. And after years of hearing that message, patience began to wear thin. Online discussions grew louder. Clips were rewatched. Old quotes resurfaced. People started connecting past promises with present outcomes, asking whether progress was matching the league's rapidly rising popularity. Attendance was up. Viewership was climbing. Jerseys were selling. So why did parts of the conversation still feel stuck in neutral? That disconnect sparked backlash, not explosive but steady and persistent, the kind that doesn't burn out quickly. Some fans pointed to how quickly other leagues adjusted once momentum hit. Others argued the WNBA's situation was more complex. Both sides had valid points, but the debate itself became the story. And once the focus shifts from games to governance, perception matters just as much as reality. Players were watching this unfold in real time. While most stayed professional and composed, the emotional weight was hard to miss. Body language, tone shifts, carefully chosen pauses in interviews. Nothing overt, yet enough for fans to sense alignment between what they were feeling and what players might not be able to say. Reports claim internal feedback loops grew tighter during this period. More private conversations, fewer public assurances, the kind of recalibration that happens when external pressure becomes impossible to ignore. And then came the comparisons. Rookies versus veterans, new attention versus long-standing contributions. Some fans believe rising stars unintentionally highlighted gaps that had existed for years. Others felt veterans were being unfairly pulled into narratives they didn't create. Either way, the line had been drawn. This was no longer about waiting patiently. It was about whether momentum would finally be matched with meaningful action, or quietly managed until the noise faded. And what happened next would determine which side of that line the league landed on. While the public debate played out online, a different story was unfolding away from cameras. This is where things became more complicated. As fan pressure grew, reports suggest internal conversations started changing tone. Not louder, not dramatic, just more serious. The kind of discussions that happen when leaders realize a situation won't resolve itself with time alone. Some insiders believe front offices and league officials were suddenly balancing two competing realities. On one side, unprecedented attention and momentum. On the other, long-standing structures that weren't built for this level of scrutiny, adjusting too fast carried risk, moving too slow carried consequences. And everyone knew it. What made this moment different was visibility. Every decision, every delay, every carefully worded statement was being analyzed in real time. Fans weren't just reacting anymore, they were anticipating, looking for patterns, reading between lines. Players felt it too. While public comments stayed measured, subtle shifts were noticeable. Less deflection, more precision. When questions came up, answers felt intentional, as if every word was weighed for how it might land beyond the room. Some fans believe this was the moment when trust became fragile, not broken, but tested. Because trust isn't lost in one headline. It erodes when expectations rise faster than responses. Rumors suggest internal proposals were debated heavily during this stretch. Not all of them moved forward. Some stalled, others were reworked. and a few reportedly created friction between different sides of the conversation. Growth-focused optimism versus cautious long-term planning. That tension mattered. It shaped timelines, it influenced messaging, and it quietly raised the stakes for whatever came next. Meanwhile, media narratives began shifting again. Coverage wasn't just about games or stars anymore. It focused on leadership, accountability, and whether the league could adapt quickly enough to match its moment. And once that framing takes hold, it's hard to reverse. Fans noticed the silence between updates. Players noticed the questions that kept coming. And decision-makers felt the weight of knowing that whatever happened next wouldn't just affect one season, it would define credibility moving forward. This wasn't a crisis yet, but it was a crossroads, and the next move would either restore confidence or confirm the doubts that were quietly spreading. Then something shifted, not because of an announcement, not because of a statement, but because fans stopped waiting for clarity. Online conversations grew sharper, less patience, more certainty. What started as curiosity turned into conclusions, with timelines being created, screenshots resurfacing, and old quotes suddenly gaining new meaning. This was no longer just debate, it was interpretation. Some fans believed this was the point where silence became a message of its own. Every day without movement felt louder than the last. And in the attention economy, hesitation rarely gets the benefit of the doubt. What made this moment dangerous wasn't outrage, it was confidence. Viewers weren't asking questions anymore. They were forming narratives. And once narratives take hold, revering them takes more than explanations. Media coverage followed that shift. Headlines subtly changed tone. Analysts stopped hedging. Instead of waiting to see, coverage leaned toward what this could mean long-term. And that framing matters because it reshapes how casual viewers interpret everything that comes next. Players found themselves in a tough position. Some chose to stay quiet, focusing on the game. Others spoke carefully, offering support without committing to specifics. And a few comments, though neutral on the surface, sparked deeper discussion than anyone expected. Fans read everything closely. A pause before answering. A word emphasized. A sentence that didn't quite land. And suddenly, even routine interviews felt loaded. Rumors suggest internal pressure didn't just come from fans or media. It came from timing. With other leagues and projects competing for attention, there was growing concern about losing momentum to the next headline cycle. Because momentum doesn't wait. Some fans believe this was the exact moment when expectations officially outpaced execution, when excitement turned into accountability, and when supporters who once defended patience began asking harder questions. The league hadn't failed, but it hadn't reassured either. And that uncertainty created space for speculation, frustration, and louder voices to fill the gap. By now, the conversation wasn't about one decision anymore. It was about trust, direction, and whether leadership truly understood how fast the landscape had changed. The window for a clean reset was closing, and whatever happened next wouldn't just respond to criticism. It would reveal priorities. Because once fans stop waiting, they start deciding for themselves what the story is. And that's when it crossed a line. Not because of one move on the court, not because of one comment online, but because the conversation stopped being just about basketball. What fans were really reacting to was symbolism, visibility, opportunity, power. Who gets backed when the pressure hits and who gets told to wait. In a league where momentum is currency, every decision feels heavier than it looks. Some fans believe this situation tapped into a deeper frustration that's been building for years. Not anger at any one person, but fatigue with patterns. Promises made, growth delayed, progress that always seems just one season away. And when expectations rise faster than results, disappointment doesn't whisper, it echoes. Media voices started framing the issue differently. Instead of focusing on individual performances, coverage shifted toward leadership, strategy, and long-term vision. Questions weren't about stats anymore. They were about direction, about whether the league was reacting to moments or shaping them. That distinction matters, because reacting keeps you alive, but shaping keeps you relevant. Players, meanwhile, were stuck in the middle. Some were celebrated as symbols of the future. Others were quietly positioned as reminders of what the league already had. And fans noticed the contrast. Who was highlighted? Who was protected? Who was expected to carry more without being given more? None of it was said outright. But perception doesn't need confirmation to spread. Rumors suggest internal conversations became more cautious. Messaging tightened. Public statements grew safer. And when messaging gets safer, fans often assume something riskier is happening behind the scenes. That's how trust erodes, not through scandals but through distance. What made this moment different is that fans weren't just watching anymore. They were comparing across leagues, across platforms, across timelines, and those comparisons weren't flattering. Other leagues moved faster, adapted quicker, took bigger swings. And suddenly, standing still felt like falling behind. This wasn't about one season or one project. It was about whether women's basketball could control its own narrative, or if it would always be reacting to the loudest moment instead of leading the next one. By now, the pressure wasn't coming from critics. It was coming from supporters who wanted more. And that's the hardest kind to satisfy. Because when belief turns into expectation, anything less than clarity feels like a letdown. And what came next would decide whether this moment became a turning point, or just another missed opportunity that fans would remember long after the headlines faded. What happened next wasn't loud. There were no emergency press conferences, no public arguments, no dramatic walkbacks. Instead, there was silence. And in this space, people started listening more closely. Fans noticed how carefully players chose their words. Interviews became shorter, answers more polished. Nothing controversial, but nothing revealing either. That alone raised eyebrows. Because when athletes who usually speak freely start tightening up, it often means something shifted internally. Some fans believe private conversations were happening away from cameras, not confrontations, recalibrations. Moments where people reassessed roles, expectations, and how much risk they were willing to take moving forward. And those moments don't always show up in headlines. Social media activity also changed. Posts that once felt celebratory became more neutral. Engagement dipped. The energy felt contained, not gone, just managed. That subtle shift matters. Because momentum in modern sports isn't only built on wins, it's built on feeling, on whether fans sense excitement or restraint, and restraint can feel like uncertainty. Meanwhile, media coverage softened. Instead of bold takes, analysts began hedging. Language became careful, long-term vision, growing pains, still early, phrases that buy time but don't inspire confidence. Reports claim that behind the scenes, decision-makers were emphasizing patience, building, stability, all reasonable ideas, but difficult to sell when expectations were already sky-high. That's the tension. Patience sounds smart, but urgency feels necessary. Players were still competing. The product on the court hadn't collapsed, but perception was drifting. And once perception shifts, it's hard to pull back. Fans didn't stop caring. They just started watching differently. Instead of asking, how good can this get? They started asking, where is this really going? That question lingered. Because women's basketball isn't short on talent, it's short on time. Every missed window invites comparisons. Every slow response fuels debate. And while nothing officially broke, something cracked. Not trust, but certainty. By this point, the situation had outgrown the original moment. It became a case study, a measuring stick, a reminder that progress isn't only about adding more games or more coverage. It's about alignment between players and leadership, between messaging and reality, between hype and follow-through. And with all eyes watching, the league now faced a choice it couldn't delay much longer. Lean into the discomfort, or risk letting the moment quietly slip away. Because silence can protect you, but it can also cost you everything if you wait too long to speak.